Go. Hey, Pika,
Yeah,
do you know who J.P. Morgan is?
like Morgan Freeman.
No, not that Morgan, not that Morgan, the other Morgan.
I don't know
The
any
one who
other
has,
Morgans. Can you
the one
explain
that
who
has
he is, like we're supposed to for this series?
J.P. Morgan was or John Pin Pierpoint Morgan Sr. If I'm being honest, kind of a pretty epic name to be say so. Is basically one of the most very famous financier, aka he was a hard capitalist. Are you ready to talk about money?
Yep.
Money, money,
Talk
money.
about money and financing and stress.
Money. I meant to say Morgan. I said money instead.
Morgan Freeman.
Morgan was born to. Hold on. Morgan was born to a very, basically, the Morgan family was very famous. It was, very famous, and they knew what they were doing. So they're already kind of dipped their toes into the finances.
Interesting.
And he basically had a ton of varied education. And he went to a public school and where he was popular, and he then passed an exam for a high school to Boston, which basically he went to the high school that specialized in mathematics.
Interesting.
And then graduations, he went to France and then went to improve his German, and then he got a degree in art history. In 1858, after studying at the universities, J.P. Morgan went to London and joined his father, a partner in a banking firm. For the next 14 years, he worked as father representation in an affiliate banking house. So, do you get what this means?
Yeah.
He was kind of like a big. He helped the bank function, and he was a financier there. And then Morgan moved to New York City and worked as a junior clerk. But his father's reputation was more successful to him. And Morgan had a lot of independence from his father. His investments, his decisions, his lifestyle were all very different from his father, Spencer Morgan, or Julius, but I don't know how to pronounce his first name, so we'll just call him Spencer. Yeah. The Duncan and Sherman Company, where Morgan entered the law firm, a firm on a rash business failures, which basically means Morgan wasn't doing too hot and compared to his father, so he he worked for a business who was basically focused on trade and enterprise.
Okay.
The creators, the Baring brothers. Oh yeah, what were you gonna say?
Nothing.
So people demanded a lot of payment to deny them, and the owner basically the loan basically survived that the London office that he worked was stable. But then Duncan Sherman came under criticism on the Wall Street, and his agency worked. And then Morgan urged his father to stay with Duncan Sherman about outrageous reports. While in Duncan Sherman, Morgan basically was working at Duncan Sherman. He gained experience in financing and recognition of railroads, including the major Ohio and Mississippi, Illinois center lines.
Ohio.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah.
Okay, but why is Ohio so cursed?
It isn't. It's a meme, bro.
I don't know why it's so cursed. I don't get it. So he was. Do you get what this means?
Yeah.
He was basically like he was a capitalist who did a lot of trainy stuff. You like trains?
No, actually.
I like
I des-
trains.
I despise all trains.
Train phobic.
Sure.
And then he negotiated the loans for a lot of the trams, and he transmitted payments and orders for New York Stock Exchange, and he conducts credit checks on houses. And in January 1859, Morgan spent a lot of months in the South to visit the firm's corporation in Georgia, Alabama, and Louisiana, basically to improve his knowledge on business. He then briefly visited Cuba, where he basically loved Cuban cigars. Do you know what a Cuban cigar is?
No.
A Cuban cigar is basically this big cigar that you put in your mouth. It's very famous. Have you ever seen like a bad guy in a TV show
Yeah.
who's like smoking a cigarette?
Mm-hmm.
Chances are he's probably smoking a Cuban cigar because of how big it is.
That's what she said.
He then spent time in New Orleans, and Duncan Sherman basically kind of was a bit resentful towards him. He then visited his father in London, and they were still not on the best terms. As American Civil War began, if you don't know, American Civil War, we'll talk about maybe in a future episode. Wink, wink. Business, because of this war, started delaying his efforts to his own office. He opened
What does that mean?
What?
The fuck is business because of something delaying his own office? What the hell does that mean?
Do you understand what I'm saying?
No, I do not. I did not understand a word of what you said before, like a second before.
Basically, American Civil War was going on, and the business was slowing down because of the war.
Oh no.
Oh no! The war is ruining our business! Sorry. He basically opened a new company, and between April and July 1861, he conducted operations of a one-room office. He also then avoids serving the war by paying a substitute to take his place. Not gonna lie, that's kind of based. Well, Pika, if you were in a war, would you pay a substitute to be your replacement?
I don't know. Would I?
You would get paid only $300.
Be in a war?
Yeah, to be in a war.
That is obnoxiously little.
Yeah, I know. In 1862, Morgan, his cousin James Goodwin, a partner, received a boost when his father was starting to succeed again. His father transferred all the London office remaining credit to Duncan Sherman by the end of 1862. Morgan's company was considered one of the stronger private banking houses on Wall Street. The Civil War was kind of getting a bit bigger. It altered his focus on eliminating his cotton business and drastically reducing iron imports from American railroads. Basically, he couldn't get the things to make the trains. To summarize it simply. You get that?
Yeah.
In August 1861, Morgan lent $20,000 to Simon Stevens. He was an attorney and secretary to Theodore Stevens, who at the time was a U.S. House representative. So, he then had to pay some money to. Basically, he did some deal with the government, and the government was kind of being a bit not that supportive of his like life and style. So they sent a loan to him, and he had barrels replaced with and shipped them. And then Stephen, the same Stephen who we gave the $20,000 to, approached him for another loan, which he again refused. Stevens, for the $200 million loan, attempted to remove him from the transaction, and this resulted in Morgan receiving $50,000 from the army, basically deducting the loan, making the loan basically not work anymore. You get that?
Yep.
This guy kind of bullshitted his out of a way for paying taxes.
Interesting.
A lot of debate has been passed over of what actually happened and how he got the money, but people don't know. See, then, in 1871, at his father's financer became J.P Morgan's mentor. They formed Drexel Morgan Company. This was a new merchant banking partnership in New York. It was an investment for agents of Europe in the United States and assumed a leading role in financing. So basically, he was doing big. The railroads were getting better and better. And Morgan, along with Drexel, started helping to pay for U.S. soldiers. So did you get how he kind of became bigger and bigger as time went on?
Yeah.
He went from being a little banker, financer, to helping the U.S. Army getting the U.S. Army pay. He then started investing more and more into railroads. He led a syndicate on privilege of J. Cook. J. Cook was again a financer. And he financed a national railroad empire. He raised a ton of money sums in Europe. He then managed to reorganize the railroads corporations effectively and was an early pioneer of private equity investing, which means is where you kind of pay in a little sequy. So you pay a lot of money to get something big. In 1887, Morgan successfully went to a New York Central holding, and he was getting bigger and bigger as time went on. And then in 1870, Congress passed the Interstate Commerce Act, which is a law designed to regulate the railroad industry. Which, in this eyes, was basically a big win for Morgan. Did you get how it was a win?
Yeah.
Because more trains, more railroads, more stuff. Unfortunately, the Morgan and Drexel Company found an untimely end when Anthony Drexel unfortunately died. Yep. The firm was then renamed to the J.P. Morgan Company, and retaining the close ties with the Drexel Company. And at that point, and by the 1900s, it was one of the world's most powerful banking houses. Morgan had a ton of partners over the year, but he was only in charge of a lot of them. This is what happens. The Panic of 1893. was a economic depression in the United States. Do you know about the Great Depression?
Mm-hmm.
This was the Great Depression before the Great Depression depressioned. He then put a lot of money into gold reserves, and he put a plan for the federal government to buy gold from his banks. He then got declined. He then demanded a meeting with President Grover Cleveland, and if action was not taken, the government could go bye-bye. And then he came up with a plan, using an old Civil War statue, led Morgan to sell 5 million ounces of gold to the U.S. Treasury in exchange for 30-year bond issues. How much do you think 3 million gold is worth today?
Like tens of millions?
That's a lot of smackaroos, if I gotta say so. And it saved his treasury. And Cleveland Standlings was kind of like, oh god, we messed up. Now we're looking bad because we didn't get to pay the money to him. And he then, next presidential election rolled, and William McKinley won. Yay.
Yippee.
Yippee! Too bad William McKinley got JFK'd.
Oh, damn.
He got assassinated, but that's... Hey, speaking of stuff we've talked about, the Nikola Tesla Wardenclyffe Station. Remember?
Yeah, I remember that episode.
Nikola Tesla. Tesla basically talked to Morgan about a wireless communication system based on Morgan's theories of the Earth. And they decided to build a Wardenclyffe that would basically do a ton of cool things. Morgan was like, hell yeah, and gave Tesla $150,000, equivalent to $4 million in today's standards, so pretty damn big. And he developed the patents and everything. The letter of agreement was assigned. And then Morgan was like, I'm not going to give you any more money, Tesla. And then Tesla was like, okay, pack your bags, I'm out of here. Well, that's not what actually happened. The Northern Pacific Railway, one of Morgan's very big railways, went bankrupt in the panic of 1893. And Morgan was like, I love my trains, and if I can't have my trains, no one can. Actually, that didn't happen. He just built the train again. And then they created a new company to merge the Free Religion's most important railways, the Pacific Railway, the Northern Railway, the Chicago Railway, and they ran into a pros from President Theodore Roosevelt. Oh yeah, quick thing, but Theodore Roosevelt is actually my favorite U.S. president of all time.
More than Joe Biden?
Yeah, more than Joe Biden. He's my favorite president of all time.
More than insert horrible political figure here.
Yeah, anyway. We may do an episode about Roosevelt. Wink, wink.
Keep talking.
He was considered, basically, Roosevelt was like, I do not want to merge all the railways together. And then Roosevelt was like, sue them! And then Morgan did not lose any money because of how big and powerful he was. In 19, Morgan talks to purchase Andrew Callings, who is an industrial and philanthropist, business and merge it with other steel, coal mining, shipping firms to build more trains. The answer to everything in Morgan's life? Trains. Loved the trains. He then formed the United States Steel Corporation. Oh, did you say something?
No.
Hey, Corporation, which was $1 billion company. It had a basic capability of 4.4 billion, which was the first ever $1 billion company in the world. The goal was to more trains and I guess to get better economies. This would basically the United States was like to the United Kingdom, like, and Germany was like, is this okay? And they're like, I don't know. So then, a lot of critics, regarded the U.S. steel as a monopoly to dominate not only steel but bridges, ships, railroad, cars, rails, wire, nails, and a ton of other projects. Morgan captured a lot of the steel market, dropped, and unfortunately, and then it got increased criticism from labor politics.
Sorry to interrupt you, but like, could you just remind me what Morgan's full name is?
J.P. Morgan, or
Thank you.
Steel, which the U.S. Steel kind of flippity-floppity. And then he built another, and then he had another flop of a failed London Underground Railway. Yikes. Are you ready to talk about the Titanic?
Yo, Titanic.
Back, I'm flying!
Look, Mom, no boat.
The Morgan Company was financed the Titanic, which is a... Okay, I'm not even going to explain what the Titanic is. I feel like everyone knows what it is.
Yeah.
Apparently, Morgan was actually going to go on the Titanic. And he didn't. But what if he did, though?
What if he did?
That would be a plot twist.
Yeah.
And then he lost a lot of money from the crash. Are you ready for another panic?
No.
The Panic of 1907 was basically a financial crisis that crippled the economy. A ton of banks were on the verge of bankruptcy. Morgan was like desperately trying to hold everything together. He was holding it with... Hold on real quick, I gotta mute. Just give me a second.
This episode is so scuffed. I'm also muted. Oh my god, it's scuffed. I just want to get this over with. Hi, podcast watchers. I'm very tired right now. We're recording this a day late. It's like
Hello?
9. Oh, shit, he's back.
Pika?
Hey.
I'm back, okay. And then they tried to merge again, and they talked to Roosevelt about this, and he was like, no. And then the crisis ended, like any other crisis. This is where a lot of people were investigating him for some of his shady practices, like the loan term for the gold, and how he handled the panic of 1907. They blamed him for a lot of railroads failing. He then had to testify in a courtroom in front of the House of Bank, Community and Financial Service. The committee concluded that he was fine. And another investigation discovered that he had thousands of slaves.
Sorry, what?
Morgan had thousands of slaves.
Oh.
It was through an investigation that someone did.
Oh.
I bet you weren't expecting that, huh?
I was not. I was not.
And he had hundreds of slaves. And the bank, said when they were asked about this, we're like, we gotta go up. And yeah, it was a little bit. Morgan was traveling abroad on March 31st, 1913. He was almost going to turn 76. And then he died in a hotel plaza in Italy.
How did he die?
He was old.
Wait, in Italy?
Yeah, in Italy, he was almost 76. So,
I have the Wikipedia page open. It says he died in Florida.
We'll talk about it later, okay?
Okay.
And he got brought aboard a French airline. His son, J.P. Morgan Jr., this was still the era where naming someone Jr. was cool, took over his business, but he never was able to do the same act that Morgan was, same thing and same famous that Morgan was able to do. Thank you all for listening to my rambles about J.P. Morgan, the man in the mustache, the OG Monopoly. Thank you for watching, and thank you, Pika, for listening. See you in the next episode. Bye!